Okay then, test 10, rookie. Okay, this is going to be another trip to the moon with my home-built craft. Basically, I use this as a transport vehicle to take a lot of kerbals either to my space stations or my moon bases, bring people back. So I opted to go with a 6-crew capsule and built the ascent stage and descent stage myself. Because the craft is considerably big, I'll have to wait a little while to show you this after I separate the fairings. This craft is a monster. Started out with the center stack, which is 2 tanks. Actually, it's a 2-stage center stack, followed by 4 boosters, all using the mainsail engine, followed by 4 solid rocket motors, which I put these on afterwards because with this center guy I didn't have enough. I want to go clear to the moon with this. My intention is to take the whole center stack all the way to the moon, where I will then separate my landing rocket. To do this took me all these guys and all these guys. I also had to put some extra fuel tanks on just to refuel this center stack once I get to orbit, because I can get to orbit fine, but then I can't get to the moon. So at that point I have to add a little fuel, and I will be doing that manually. Excuse me while I have a vape, because after all I am a vaping astronaut. These will have some stock and modded parts. Some people like to play the game completely stock. I don't, because there's just other parts that the mods bring along with it that I really enjoy. It just adds to the experience for me. Gives me looks and different options that I couldn't just get in the stock game. So to each his own, however way you like to rock. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more as we go, so let's get this going. I'm going to use Mechjeb as I do with all my trips. Mechjeb's going to control all my staging. You know, after I set it all up, going to control my getting me into orbit, landing, docking, doing all the calculating that my dumbass couldn't do on my own. So it's just the way I like to do it. So let's get this going. And I'll take the menu off while I launch. Ha ha. Power, baby. A lot of power, a lot of fuel, a lot of weight. I'm using Separatrons on all my boosters and my solid rocket motors. You can see them. Helps me kick away. I adjusted the thrust on all these after repeated flights to get the separation just the way I like it, which is nice and slow and deliberate. All this extra lighting going on is from the engine lighting mod, which kind of lights up the surrounding area. If you didn't have that mod, sometimes they overdo it a little bit. There we go, separation, nice. But see, it gives you some extra lighting, and I've tried both ways. I've played with it a lot, and sometimes, you know, as I said, they overdid the lighting a little bit, so I tried to take it off, and I couldn't fly very long with it off because it's just too flat looking. I'm not using any visual mods. There's a mod called Real Plume. I don't use that either. I prefer the stock plumes. I just think they look cool. They have a lot of mods to change the visual look, to change the distances, the scale of the game. I'm actually afraid to use those guys because I'm having a hard enough time flying this as it is, and if you change the scale on me, man, I don't know how the hell I'd get used to all that. Even though it would be more realistic. Longer burn times, longer distances. But for now, I'm going to try to get better at the stock game before I even think about doing stuff like that. You can see I got some heating action going on a little bit up here. That tells me that I'm probably using more power than I need. I'm kind of slamming through the atmosphere. Those are little tweaks that I have to get better at doing. Maybe adjusting these two guys right here might help me go approach orbit a little bit slower. This will dissipate after we get up to a certain altitude. Getting ready to separate. There we go. And like I said, this guy is full now. So he took off at 35,000 kilometers with a fuel tank, a full tank, to help be able to get me to orbit. I have to switch over, get my list of my hotkeys up here so I don't forget, because I have certain things on hotkeys. And we're going to be entering our coast phase here shortly. And you can see where I'm at with the fuel. See, it's taking a lot of fuel because there's still a lot of weight in this guy. There we go. I'm going to ditch the fairings. And there's my moon rocket. Now we're coasting, still going up. We'll get to a certain point. There's all my thrusters. You can see how many of those guys I had to put on here to be able to control this thing. This is like flying a bus into orbit. Just get a little bit of warp to move me over a little bit quicker. There we go. And we're doing our orbit burn. Because this craft is so big and so squirrely and probably not in very good balance, a lot of times I have to turn off the nodes. See, Mechjeb is calculating when to cut off, you know, as my fuel gets down. And I think because my imbalance, see the node, the blue node here, will move when I get out of fuel, and it's supposed to disappear. It's supposed to just stop because it did, Mechjeb did what it was programmed to do, but sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes I have to remove the node myself. So let's see if it does. See, it's cutting down. See, and it didn't. See, it keeps it going a little bit longer. And if I let it stay there, my spacecraft would go into a slow tumble. So now I'm in orbit. And you can see all of that fuel that it took got me there, but there's no way that I can go to the moon now. If I want to take this guy all the way to the moon, I could separate and ditch this guy and try to fly this all the way into the moon, but I'm going to have a problem there too, just because of so much weight that I have. So I'm electing to do it this way. There's my moon craft. Let's switch camera a little bit. I like this guy. And you can see I have extra fuel for the ascent stage and extra fuel for the descent stage too, where I can add these manually as I need as I'm coming down and going back up, and then I can jettison these off so they'll slam back down on the moon. I try to do this whole thing without having any space junk left over. And you can see, if you look down, you can see where my landing legs are. I use these girders to kick the landing legs out, because if I put them straight on the craft's so tall that it would just, for one, look weird, just wouldn't look proportional, and I wouldn't have much stability when I landed. It wouldn't take much to tip that puppy over. When I deploy legs, you'll see what I'm talking about. It looks a lot better with it extended out like that. Okay, let's do some fuel transfer. I'm going to do this manually. I'm just using the stock in-game method. There are some mods that do this, but this works for me. So I'll start with the bottom tank. Go over to the other side for some balance as I'm draining these. And let's go ahead and start the transfer. Would have been cool if they would have put a pumping sound in here during all this. That would have been pretty neat. Okay, got half done. Let's rotate this guy a little bit. Let's roll him around. And you can see these thrusters are doing some work. Again, can you imagine trying to keep it bus positioned in space? These things are kind of working. See, it wants to roll a little bit. So I'll start on the second section of the tank and start the process again. As I said, I had the 4 boosters with the duct going to the center, so when they emptied, the center would be full. I didn't want to try to do that with the tanks, because I don't think it would have worked out good, because it would have been draining it the whole time I was flying. By the time I got to orbit, I don't think I would have had as much total fuel left is the way I'm doing it. Okay, we did all our transfer. Okay, you can see that helped me a lot. Now I'm going to be able to get this guy over there. So let's go ahead and go into the map, locate the mun. There she is. And you can see I have some stuff going on. I got a space station around there and some bases. So I'm going to go ahead and set as target. I'm going to go ahead and select home and transfer. Create node to see where it's going to be. Execute. Get me in position. You see I have 5 minutes to go. Let's go ahead and get our solar panels going. I'll look in a minute. Okay, there's our burn. Going to the moon. There she is. And you can see I have a few lights spread out through the craft to give me a little effect rather than have it all darkened out. I don't have anything on this end, but you can see I have some up here. Now we'll see if Mechjeb shuts it off and stops the node. And it didn't again. So I cut it off myself so I can keep the craft orientated. You see I have some extra batteries on here too. That was one of the benefits of putting the girders on, give me some extra room. I have some monopropellant tucked under both of these, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, let's go to the map. You can see I'm on my way. Let's just warp over there. Okay, there we are. We're on our collision course with the moon. So we better do some things so that don't happen. There's the moon. Okay, a couple things I can do here. The object is to ditch the bus, fly this guy into the moon. When I establish moon orbit, I will undock again and fly this puppy down to the moon. This will be my mothership that will be staying in orbit. So I could do this a couple of ways. I can decouple here, just fly this guy in, or I could decouple here, get a little distance, decouple here, turn this guy around, redock, then fly it in. That's the way I'm going to do it. Just because it's fun and there's just more things to do. So we're going to decouple. Get him out a little distance. Then I'm going to jog it over just a little bit. And let me get a little bit farther away too. And now we're going to decouple here. And get a little distance here. And let's jog it over a little bit too. Move the craft. Let's get him away from that decoupler a little bit. And let's also jog him over a little bit. See what we're doing? We're getting that decoupler out of our way. Now we want to go to this guy. Select him as target. This guy's still using his thrusters to stay in position. There we go. Now there's our target. So what we're going to do first, we're going to use Smart ASS, node, target. This is going to turn him around. So we're facing this guy. Now we're going to turn on our docking cameras, which I can't live without. And we're going to turn on our docking autopilot. I know, I'm a wuss. Now he's going to do a little work to get in position. Let me go to the other guy. So I can turn the docking cameras on this end also. Just gives me a little extra visual, which I personally like. Watch the thruster firing on both ends. Just gives me a little different views. There's the Earth. There's the bus. There's a low decoupler floating around out there. All of these two guys are going to go slam into the moon. And also what I can do here, let me go back to my other craft right there. And I'm also going to get rid of these tanks because I already used them up. There they go. See, we're getting a few little items out here. But while all this stuff's going on, we're still in a direct collision course with the moon. So all these things are going to go crashing into the moon because they're already headed that way. And they're headed that way pretty damn fast. While all this is happening, I want to do a little added thing right here. See, I'm already facing the moon. Actually, that's good. I don't have to make any adjustments. I'm already right there. So let's try something. Let's go ahead and ignite because there's some fuel left in this guy. And let's see. There he goes. See, we didn't have to do that, but it's just fun. So what I did is I just helped this guy out a little bit to get to the moon a little bit quicker. I like a nice slow approach just because I like it. You're in space. These things take a lot of time. The astronauts, with all the things that they're doing, a lot of time's going on in between. I've got my docking camera set to 0.5 meters per second closing distance here. You can set that what you want if you like it real quick, but I don't. It's like watching the Soyuz dock. It's a slow process, slow and deliberate. Way smoother dock than I can do. Now we got these guys docked. So as I said, I didn't have to do this extra maneuver. I could have left it the other way and just flew it in. But I like fun, so we can fly it in this way or we can fly it in this way. So being that I want to save my fuel for landing on the moon, I'm going to use this engine. And I'm going to make sure that I'm controlling from the right place. You can see it switched there. So that way Mechjeb knows which direction I'm supposed to be going, this way rather than this way. If I would have left the control over here and I fired these rockets, Mechjeb would be all confused and it would set the craft spinning because the calculations in the computer were not right. So next thing we need to do is we need to set up an inclination burn. There's the degrees to bring me in to Earth, to the moon, the right direction, the same direction as the moon is orbiting around Kerbin. And I'm going to set it at a fixed time of 30 seconds to give the craft time to get in position. There's some of my space debris out there, my little tanks. Set my ISS to stop me from spinning. Okay, now that we've done that, we need to set up our orbit periapsis. We're going to set this to 30 kilometers. That'll be the height of our orbit around the moon. We're going to go a fixed time again. Give this big old craft enough time to get in position. I mean, you saw how big this craft was when we took off. This craft is still big. I'm using a cheap cost KB SB45, I believe. So this is what you're getting on this audio. Okay, that one wasn't too bad. Let me go ahead and set the AS to keep me from spinning again. Okay, we've established our periapsis. The distance, closest point is going to go around the moon. If we didn't do anything now, we would just slingshot around the moon. And we would go into this big old elliptical orbit. Now you can see our spacecraft, they're a little bit far apart. Even though I sent this guy closer with the rocket, and in this scale, he still looks pretty close. He's quite a distance away, but we're a long distance away from here in the moon. So there's about what it looks like. All your little tanks are around here. And even though when you go back out of the map, they'll look like there's some distance in between, but in this scale, there isn't very much. So as we set up our circulation burn at the next periapsis, we have an hour and 20 minutes to wait before we get that far along. So it shows you the distance-wise how far that actually is compared to that rocket that we sent off, that stage we sent off into the moon. And as we warp a little bit closer, and you'll see it slam right into the moon. You can see it was on its own trajectory. So now we're coming around the moon to do our burn to establish orbit. You hear some pops. It's me adjusting my headphones. I'm not used to wearing headphones and they tear my ears up. I'm a speaker guy. There's how much time's left on our burn. I'm probably going to have to cut the node off again. And kind of the problems with that is it affects Mechjeb's calculations. Let's see how close we got on our orbit. 30 and 26. See, this big old craft, that's about as accurate as it gets. I could make a fine-tuned circulation burn, or I could just leave it like that. Almost 31. You know what? I am going to do a correction burn. I'm going to set it at the next periapsis. You can see when I create my node, it's going to kick me out just a little bit to try to circularize this burn a little bit closer than what it is. Probably didn't need to do this. Let's see if we got another 7 minutes before we're going to be there, so let's go ahead and give her a little bit of help. Try that. That's closer. See, we're at 39, little bit over 31, and we're about 29, almost 30. Pretty good. Much better than it was before. Okay, let's go ahead and warp a little bit so we can get us on the lit side so we're a little more visible. That way we can see us a little bit better. I'm doing it till I come out pretty straight too. Let's go like that. That should be good. Okay. There's my craft that I was talking about. This is the Gemini crew compartment. This is in the FASA mod. And I chose this because for one I like the way it looks, and for another it holds 6 kerbals. Most of my flying is doing stuff like transferring kerbals from one place to another. Going up to the base, I have a base around, a space station around here. I could fly up to the space station, drop a couple of them off, or pick up a couple that have been there for a while. I go down to a moon base, same thing. Switch them out, leave some, pick up others. If I was in the Apollo craft, I'd have an additional thing I had to do because I'd have the command module with 3 kerbals in it, and then I'd have the limb over here empty. So I'd have to transfer a couple guys from one to the other. Here, they're already in the landing craft, so I don't have to do any of that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to undock, and I want to make sure I get my right. I didn't even set up a hotkey to undock. I forgot. Undock. I'm going to have to do that. Okay, this is my mother craft, which I really don't want to move. So let me switch guys. And see, I have a little momentum moving me apart from the undocking. Let it get a little bit farther away, and we'll help it. Don't want to do this too aggressive, because this movement will also move this guy. So I'm just going to take my time, do little baby thrusts. And of course, this whole procedure in real time would be, you know, quite a little time. These things you don't want to rush. You want to take your time, make sure you don't set up any possible collisions. Okay, we're in a good pace. So now we're going to get ready to set up our landing. Okay, first thing we can do is open the landing gear. Here's when you can see I'm talking about. Now you can get a little idea of proportion on the legs compared to the length of the craft. Looks much better than if I would have had these legs up against here. So see, this is a much better. They could even go out a little bit farther, to tell the truth. But that looks much better, and it makes the landing much more stable to keep this guy upright when he comes in. Okay, now it's just up to the user on how he wants to get down. The experienced guys can do all this manually, which is beyond my pay grade at this point in time. So I'm just going to rely on a computer to do it for me. That's how I look at Mechjeb, programming the computer, and then it takes care of the rest, instead of me grabbing the stick and trying to fly this thing down myself. So since I'm using Mechjeb, I have some options. I could click land somewhere, which is going to be the fastest way down. Basically, the landing computer is going to plot the fastest way down, and that's just where it's going to be. That's not the way I want to go. The other one would be to pick target on a map. If I did that and went back to the map, I could go in here and pick a spot. Let's take a look, try to pick a spot that's not full of boulders. Say if I want to try to land dead center in that crater, I could select that, and Mechjeb will do a pretty good job of trying to get me there. Or I can land from coordinates that I put in manually, which is the way I'm going to do it. Now the way I position myself, I can see I have some future plans to put some bases all the way along through here, so I have them all the way around. You can see I'm working on that. I have them spread out around, so I'm about what, halfway, a little over, halfway. Eventually my plan is to have more bases spread out through here, because you never know when you're coming up what side you're going to be on. And you can see right now all of my bases, with the exception of this one, happens to be on the dark side. Now I guess it really doesn't matter. I mean, you can go down to the dark side and then just do a little warping until you get back on the lit side. But I like landing on the light side just because it gives me more visual as I'm going down. So let's choose this guy. He's like right in between. So I'm going to choose Moonbase 10. Let's take a look at the coordinates. 159.47 south. (159.48 south), 176.50.46. West. 76.50. 159.47. Just double checking. My coordinates were purposely not put in exact because I want to land close to this guy. I don't want to land right on top of it. And that's what you'd do if you chose the exact coordinates. If you plan on flying up here a few times, which of course I do, I might have been here 5 or 6 times already, 10 times. I might have previous crafts spread out around here that I've landed previously. That's where this comes in, to keep track of what I'm putting in here so I don't accidentally 2 weeks later come in here and put the same thing in there again. So I have them set. Let me go out of the map And I need to arm my descent stage. And then I need to land a target. It'll first do a little warping. Moving it around. Now it's going to push me a little bit sideways since that space station was out of the orbit plane a little bit. Now we're going to start our descent burn. Since we're going to the moon, there's no atmosphere, so we can't rely on parachutes. We have to basically burn our way down. A lot of calculations involved to keep you orientated the correct way, to know how much thrust to give it, at which time, to be able to take me down where the computer is plotting me to go. Right now I'm not even using any engines, pretty much coasting, because again it's plotting the path down. So it'll let orbit carry me, and it'll make the burns accordingly. As I go down, you can see how much fuel I got, quite a bit right now. So starting my burn, slow me down. I chose the KW Rocketry Vesta. It's the one I like better. I have the Terrier motor in the ascent stage. You could get by with something a little bit smaller than this. You could use the spark motor if that's your thing. Not my thing. I won't use that motor. Excuse me. And the main reason I won't use it is because I don't like the rocket exhaust on it. Too wimpy. See, we're at actually full thrust right now. Well, this will vary in certain parts where we won't need to have full thrust. But I like the plume. I like the rocket exhaust. I like the sound. The spark motor, they should rename that motor and call it the big motor because it looks like a big cigarette lighter. The exhaust. That's what it reminds me of every time I see it. Every time I see that motor, I picture a little kerbal back here sitting there with his arm out there, with his arm out the exhaust, flicking his big lighter. So I didn't need to see that thing too many times before I said, nah, that motor's not for me. I need to put a real motor on it. But that's just me. We've used quite a bit of fuel already. That's why I brought these tanks. Let's go ahead and start transferring some fuel. And I'll empty this guy first. And I'll go over to the other side. And empty this guy. I could still do another one. I already chose that one. Okay, sucked and dry. Double check. Now I have these on separators, so I can jettison these things into the moon anytime I want. In fact, let's do that now. Here we go, got rid of those guys. They're all on a collision course to the moon, so they're all gonna hit the ground, detonate. There's my landing site down there. You can see I've been there before because I got 2 or 3 things going on down there. And you're gonna hear these guys in a second. You'll see the shadows as it gets closer. Ba-boom. I'll be doing the same thing with these guys when I launch back up. And I got a little distance away this time. Could have probably set my coordinates a little bit closer than that. And you can see the game gets to a point where it starts lagging because it's starting to pick up the part count from this base, which is pretty big. One of the limitations on the game, after you go a certain part count, same thing on space stations. I love building them big, and I like having a lot of detail in them, but that's a downside because when you get them too big and you start putting too much little stuff on them, then every time you launch up to it, you're in a lag fest. So it's like kind of a bummer because it forces you kind of to build a simpler craft than you would really want to keep the performance up. Luckily, this game doesn't have a whole lot of movements in it, so it's not as noticeable. See, when you move it around, it wouldn't be like a first-person shooter or something. I always get a little nervous when I come down in this craft. The Apollo Limb I have no problem because it's more compact and the legs are out and it's steady as a rock. Talking about the FASA Limb, not the wonky KSP. FASA Apollo wannabe lander. Talking about the real deal. So this guy, because of the length of it, is going to be our landing burn. I always get nervous that I'm not on too much of a slope because this guy, he's not as tolerant to slopes as the other guy. You can see there's a previous one that I've flown up here. In fact, there's an Apollo descent stage right there too. And let's see how this landing goes. See how it moves a little bit, see? But that was good. Much more of a slope than this. Yeah, I am at a little slope. About to land about right there. A bit better, so this craft don't like slopes very well. Okay, let's shut this guy down. Let's do a quick save. she is slanted a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and take one of the Kirby's out. Way up there. Okay. Now you can see that you can have a little sense of scale here. To show you how big that craft is. That thing is big. So sometimes you can't get an idea just how big that thing is till you put a kerbal up next to it. You go, holy shit. And there's the descent stage from a previous one. And you can see the space station. Let's do a little flyby. There's my little Kerbal hotel. Look at the size of this thing. Oh. I mean, this thing's like a couple of football fields full of kerbals. These little parts here are from another mod, Moonbase mod, that allows me to have some options of some parts that I wouldn't be able to get in a stock game. So you got some observatories, you got some crew quarters, you got some greenhouses. Got a lot of stuff here. Let's go ahead and take a little gander here. Let's go ahead and go up here. And let's see if I can go in here. Make sure I keep track of who this is. Saring Kerman. Let's go inside. Let's go inside, dudes. Okay, we're in. Probably just going to leave that kerbal there. See, now we have a list of all these kerbals that are in there. And you can see I have quite a few. Shows the background of where they at. This is called Portrait Stats mod that'll actually show you with the emblem of what these guys are. These are pilots. This is a scientist. There's an engineer. So let's take a look inside. Okay, just happened to go inside one of my greenhouses. And you can let your imagination run wild with you. And this can be whatever plant you want it to be, if you know what I'm talking about. Okay, let's go ahead and move to another place. Another greenhouse. See, this will keep shifting over. There's another section there. and it will keep displaying different modules, but it will only display the modules that have kerbals in them. So as you cycle through, if you don't have a kerbal in there, there he is, it won't show it. A lot of different places. See, there's looking out the window, and it shows part of the craft out there. Everything's orientated like it's supposed to be. See, if you're looking out the front observation deck, you can see the radiators that are dissipating heat in other parts of the craft. Kind of cool. The station does generate some heat because it does have some nuclear reactors for power. That's why I don't need any solar up here. The nuclear is doing its thing to keep these batteries charged. And I have to mention that somebody's going to be watching this vid. Oh, my ears hurt. And they're going to be going, how the hell did you get that thing up here, guy? Well, the little trick to do it is to use this mod called HyperEdit. And a lot of people use this mod for different purposes, to make videos, for research, to try out something without having to actually launch it, to see how it works out. So you use it for a test bed. There's no way I could do something like this without that mod. I mean, you can see it would be impossible. This would be impossible to build this. I won't say impossible, but to be able to bring it up here in pieces and then put the pieces together the way I have this built, you couldn't do it. There's no rockets on here anywhere. I know you can do some mods where you can actually use some mods where you can actually move parts. That's a little bit too evolved for me and too limiting. I like building stuff like this and the neat program to be able to do it. Basically what you do is you design whatever you want your base to look like, and you build it in the space plane hangar piece by piece until you get the whole thing complete. Building one of these takes a considerable amount of time. Again, just planning it alone, I mean, that's a feat in itself, just getting everything to join up right, having everything that you want in the base, making sure you got all your requirements, your power, everything counted for, and then put everything together. These nuclear reactors put out a lot of heat. I built some earlier ones without radiators on them. Again, these are all radiators, they're not solar panels, because these things put out some heat. And first one I built, I put it up there and I didn't have any radiators on it, and it would start up and 15 minutes later it was shut down, and it was because it was overheating. So after me doing a little research and figuring out that's what it was required for these, then I started putting radiators on them. And it depends how many you put too. I built one before where I had like 6 reactors on it, but I didn't have enough radiators, so I couldn't run all 6. I could run 1 or 2. And then I kind of got the idea. I think this particular one is a little bit overkill, but it looks kind of neat. So let's go ahead and as I mentioned before, once you build it, so You don't just magically make these things appear. You do have to build them. Then you put it out on the launch pad on the runway. Then you activate HyperEdit and it will pick it up and place it in orbit in any planet you tell it to. And then there's a landing section with coordinates in it if you want to use them to put it down where you want. And a word for people who are going to do this, make sure you don't forget to go into Alt 12 and turn the crash cheat on. Because when you bring this thing down, it's so big that it's probably going to self-destruct or come apart when it lands. So make sure you turn that on. I've done that the hard way before. Did all that work and brought it up there and it broke in 5 or 6 pieces. Then another neat thing is, like you saw my map where it showed how I have the bases spread out. You can use Vessel Mover to do that. You can pick this up and move it wherever you want on the moon just by using your movement keys. So I still have to build a few more bases and move them so I do have them all the way around the moon. Neat thing about doing this too is you're free to build whatever you want. You know, I have 10 bases or 9 and they're all way different than each other. I mean, I'm not going to put the same craft up here, the same base up here twice. Excuse me, that just wouldn't be any fun. They all have to be way different. So when you go to one, you go, oh yeah, I remember that one. They all have their own personality, their own little created atmosphere, if you will. So let's go ahead and get back to the craft. There's my other guy that I brought up. There's my previous descent stage of my fast LEM that was up here many moons ago. And there we are back. I came up with 3 kerbals, so I'm going to go back with 2. If I wanted to stay here a little bit longer, I could go back in the base and I could pull 4 more out and load them up and take them all back home. Normally that's the kind of stuff I do, but I'm not going to go through all that in the video. But normally I'll spend considerable time here and just do as many things as I can, because that's what, to me, that's what the game's all about, just having fun. So now we're going to set up our exit. So we're going to go back to the ascent guidance. And this time I'm going to set it at a 30-kilometer orbit, where my mothership is. I'm going to have to make a couple adjustments here on my staging. There's my descent stage, ascent stage, excuse me. Okay, what I just did, I have a pretty neat thing I put on here is I put some ullage motors strapped to my tank. There's 4 of them, solid rocket motors. They're going to kick me off of the moon very quickly. So what it's going to do is they're going to fire. The separator is going to separate the ascent stage from the descent stage, and the fairing right here is going to kick away. And then when it gets up to, after these burn out, they're only going to light for about 5 seconds. Then the second stage motor, or the ascent stage motor, will light. let's go ahead and do a quick save. Okay, let's go to the map. Let's find out where this guy is. He's right there. And I'm right here. So I'm going to warp this guy around a little bit. You know, this is all about programming the computer on when you're going to leave and where's the best positions to be in, or the quickest and most efficient way to get back up and dock with your mothercraft. So I'm going to select this guy, set him as target. And I got my altitude, my stages. I'm going to stop it at stage 2. And I'm going to launch to rendezvous. See, these 2 options weren't available until I selected the mothership as target. Okay, we have the computer's programmed now to launch in 5 minutes. And again, your mothercraft is moving this whole time to get in position. It's going to be coming up. And this thing is going to kind of calculate on how to get there. Let's speed it up a little bit. Did you see my mothership come up there? It came up right there. There she's coming. Let's do another quick save. Hopefully I got these stages right. It's gonna see if it's gonna look pretty neat. When it gets down to my target of 11 seconds is when I'm gonna enable the autopilot. Get it as close as you can. Okay, hopefully this goes good. There we go. I never get tired of that. You can see my bearings fired away. These kick motors kicked me up, and then this guy took over. Kind of neat doing it that way rather than just relying on this guy to do the whole thing. He'd do it too, but it'd go off a lot slower. See, and I have them. I was a little worried when I set this up like this because I didn't know if this was going to rip these tanks off the craft. And it didn't. It worked out okay. See, and I also have these on separators so I can get rid of these guys whenever I want. So you can see I can already start transferring if I want. Start with the top one. Let's go ahead and get rid of them. See, he's going back down on the moon. See, and I set the kick of the separators, the force. To be how you see them separating, which is toned down quite a bit. I mean, they'll kick off a lot more. See, I like them like that, but you can get them to kick off if it's default. They'll separate like a missile, and I didn't like the look, the effect of it. So now all those guys are going back on the moon, and I'm gonna have no space junk. So now we're in our coast phase. I like the look of this guy. Looks a little bit like the dragon. See, I can see the way I have it set up with some antennas, some batteries, and I wanted them exposed like that. It just kind of gives a cool look, you know, the docking port. And I just like the look of the capsule itself. You can see the two doors. I put railings around them. Give the little guys something to grab onto because you could see it was a considerable drop. And a considerable boost just to get up to them. I couldn't do a ladder all the way down because there was too much stuff in the way. Solar panels, the landing legs. There was no way I had a clear path to have a ladder going all the way straight down. So they pretty much just drop off. I could probably design that a little bit differently where I could have a ladder all the way down there. And like I said, this is the Terrier motor. This is probably one of my go-to motors for little craft. Nice, small, and compact. It has enough power. And again, the exhaust has got a way nicer look to it than the Spark. Okay, we reached orbit. Now the next stage is to program the computers again to dock, or to first get in position to dock. I'm going to set it at 100-kilometer distance. just doing all our maneuvers. See, if you're not a space guy and you can't sit through a launch on TV, or you can't sit through a docking because it's too much time, then you're probably not going to get into a game like this, because there's a lot of stuff like that involved. Real space travel, that's how it is. So if you're not prepared, if you like a little faster pace, uh, go for the multiplayer, not this game, or go play Far Cry 5 if that's that's what you like. I have Far Cry 5, Assassin's Creed, and a lot of other games like that on my computer that I still play. But lately they've been sitting there idle because I've just been playing this. Something about it's just this is me right here. It's like when I first discovered this game, it was like, whoa, where you been? You guys made this game just for me. But I have a lot of people that look at this game and they'll just go, nah, I can't do it. I can't sit through all this. My daughter, she's into the World of Warcraft and that kind of stuff, which basically I can't stand those kind of games myself, but that's how she rolls. And she watches me do this and she just shakes her head. And when I go and watch her play her game, I walk away shaking my head. It's just what you like is what you like. Planning home and transfer. So we still got a ways to go. I think maybe after this burn we'll be a little closer. Again, all this stuff is going to vary from mission to mission because you're never landing in the exact same place, exact same plane, launching at the exact same time. So every one of these approaches is going to be different from the last one you did. I've done these where I docked in as quickly as an orbit and a half. And then I've had other ones where it took me a half hour to dock and probably had to do 50 orbits and 20 rocket firings. Just depends. Of course, those times I didn't land and take off at optimal times and locations either. Some people will watch a video like this, game like this, and just be fascinated by it, just like I was. And some will watch this and they'll watch it for 3 minutes and they'll say, I'm out of here. See, there we go. Now we're close. There's my guy. And actually, we're there. See, we were the rendezvous autopilot did everything we asked it to do. Now we're just coasting to do the final maneuvers to dock. So let's go ahead and take a look at where we're at with this craft. And what I always do, and it's just how I like to play it, I like to set this craft up as parallel with the moon as I can. Because I want the docking craft to be coming in this way rather than up this way. And it wouldn't make any difference at all if you weren't using the docking cameras, which I like those things so much that I won't fly without them. I like as much effect as I can. So for purposes of the docking camera, it's good to have space behind you and in front of you rather than to be pointed down at the moon. And it's because of the docking cameras themselves. There's a little problem with them is if you have one craft facing towards the surface, the background lights up white. You can still see the craft against it, but you can't see the thruster firing. It takes out all the detail. So I'm going to put it like this. You can see I could probably still go up a little bit more. I think that's pretty good. Alright, let's go ahead and while I'm here turn on my docking camera. And you can see I'm just pointed at space. And let's go, I'm going to turn my thrusters off here. And let's go back to the other guy. See, I am still pointed down. Alright, let's turn on the docking cameras on this one too. See how I'm facing down? And you can see what I'm talking about on the background. Okay, let's go ahead and try the docking autopilot and see what happens. I think we're going to be okay on this one. So you can see now it's actually translating down to get itself in the plane. And I'm still going to be facing down a little bit. We're going to see how this one goes. See, right now it's still, the camera on this one is still not showing the surface, which is so far so good. You'll see what I'm talking about as they come into play. See, this just looks so much nicer like this. Because see now, when this guy's doing his maneuvering and his thruster firing, you're going to be able to see it real clearly in the camera. Because you have space behind it. That's just me right here, what I'm explaining. Because I've done it so many times and didn't pay attention. There you go. See how you can see the thruster firing? Yeah, I enjoy that. I enjoy as much effect as I can get. If anyone is looking at this right here, that's a Mechjeb deal. And you can see I already had the target selected. In fact, it's been selected since I was on the moon. But somehow, when you enable the docking camera, it's telling you you need to control the vessel and you need to select the target vessel. Well, that's already done. The target's already selected. I am controlling from here. But basically, it's telling you to do the whole process all over again. Go back and manually select, control from here, manually select to take these off. And for the longest time, I struggled with that. I'm going back and forth, saying, why is it giving me this warning? And then one time I just said, hell with the warnings, clicked on the autopilot, worked perfectly. There we go, dock. Keep me in position again. And now I'm just back docked. Everything's safe and sound. You can say I only got 2 kerbals instead of 3 because one's still down there at the space station, at the base. So now I'm going to plot my way back. So again, it just depends which way I want to go from. If I want to use this rocket or this one, I'm not going to have enough fuel in this one, so I'm going to shut it down. Now I could undock this guy if I want. Just let him hang out in Earth in Moon's orbit. I could undock him, burn the engines, crash land it on the Moon, or I could take the whole thing back with me. So, you know what? Just for the hell of it, I'm going to turn this back on. And I'm going to... Actually, that would be just opposite what I just said. If I wanted to take this guy off, burn him, send him crash land on the Moon, I wouldn't want to do that with this guy. But see, I don't know if I can do that either. I don't know if I have enough fuel. If I wish to separate and try to fly this back home, I don't know if I have enough fuel to do that. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I know I have enough in this guy. So I'm gonna go back to what I was originally gonna do. I'm gonna take the whole thing home. I could also go up and dock one of these guys with the space station I have around the Moon if I wanted to. So a lot of options. Just depends on what I want to do in that particular mission that I'm on. So I'm going to go shut down. I'm going to go back over here and make sure I'm controlling from this side. And see, I wasn't because it changed. So we're going to go back to the planner again. Select return from the Moon. Click on execute. And it's going to get me positioned to do another burn to take me out of the Moon's orbit and head me back in the direction to be captured by Earth's gravity again. This is going to be a trans-Earth injection. I believe I said that right. The only thing that will be landing back on Earth is this capsule with these 2 guys in it. Everything else I will jettison that will burn up. This is pretty much going to be my last burn, because this is going to put me on a trajectory to go back to Earth. Check the map, and you can see that burn took me out of the orbit, out of the Moon's orbit. Now we're getting recaptured. Here we go. Out of plane just a little bit. No big deal. I could correct that if I wanted to by doing one more little small burn, but I'm just going to leave that alone. Let me go a little bit closer. You can see I have no periapsis, meaning I'm on a collision course to be pulled into the Earth's atmosphere. And we'll be getting closer. Now I can separate anytime I want now because my plot's already being processed in the computer, so I'm on a course to land, to be re-entered in the atmosphere. So I can separate these whenever I want. Let me go a little bit closer. Let me go around 200,000. Okay, let me undock. Get him away a little bit. There he goes. Let me turn this guy a little bit. And let me undock him. There we go. Moving around a little bit. Get him about ready where he's supposed to be. And you'll see these two guys are going to burn up. They won't survive the re-entry. He will. He's got some parachutes on it. And plus he has a heat shield on him that the other ones don't. So again, ready to re-enter. You're going to see, here's my big complaint with 1.43 is this wonky re-entering effect. I just can't help but mention it every time I see it because it looks so ridiculous. If they just left the effects off, you'll see it again in a second. See right there. The separation's cool, but it's that wonky little effect right there, especially when you get close. They just, oh man. That's one of just those effects that I can do without. Kills the realism for me. Okay, so those guys are pretty much, look, there's still one of them, a couple of them. See, those are all going to hit and they'll detonate when they hit. I can't remember if I have the real shoot mod on this thing or not. Let me see. Yes, I do. Yeah, I got this one's cool. This is a real shoot mod. It's actually 2 stages. It's releasing the drogue. And then the drogue will deploy, fully deploy at an altitude I have it set at. And then it will cut. And then the main chutes will come out. They will pre-deploy. And then they will deploy at a specific altitude. So this I like. I just like this effect. You're going to see it cut in a minute. The drogue's a single chute and the mains will be 3 chutes. I released it so it coasted a little bit. There we go. I think I might change that word. Don't quite coast that long. See, now they're pre-deploying. Going into the water. There we go, full deploy. Super cool. That's what I like about the real shoot mods. I like having that drogue and the main. And problem is you're real limited to what shoots you can choose that will do that. In fact, there's only one of them that I know of. It's a circular one. If you use the other ones, they don't have the doubles on them. They only have one. So that means you'd have to put them on, and then you would have to set them up manually to release one, let it cut, and then release the second one, instead of it doing it automatically like it did here. So that's like super cool. Bringing these guys back home. What a journey. A lot of times. Now this Kirby's are going to be get out of their craft and they're going to go home and kick back. This one doesn't have any interior lights. I wish it had. It does have my lights that I put on there. Coming in. All right. Safe and sound. Later, dudes.